Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans and where the content is absolutely free. It's another bonus preview show for you tonight, guys. We're going to look at the Aberdeen game on Sunday. We'll have a wee discussion about some of the stuff that's happened through the week. As I've said to you, most weeks it's, we don't just do the podcast here at Gersnet. We've got the forum, we've got articles, match previews, match reports. There's social media, there's a history archive, all there. It's all free, so get yourselves on it. If it's your first time watching us or listening to us, we would ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're approaching 4,000 subscribers. We are the proverbial ball hair away from 4,000. I think it's down to single figures. So we're very close to 4,000 subscribers. We were around about 2,000 when all this kicked off with the lockdown and the COVID and all that kind of thing. So it's been a huge uptake. So a big thanks to everyone who's listened and stayed with us and put the word out there for us. We're live tonight. It is the Friday night before the game. We're playing on Sunday at 3:00, but the show will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. So now, to bring in the guest, we've only got one tonight. We only need one because he's such a good guest, he's the top quality guest. All the rest are shite compared to this man here. It's Alex Anderson. It's our very own Big Ek. How are you, Alex?
I'm not too bad at all, Colin. A belated Merry Christmas to yourself.
Yeah, you too. Do you have a good New Year and all that?
New Year, yes. It was quite a good mood. I can't really remember why. I was so drunk after it. But yes, and a belated good Happy New Year to all our viewers and listeners out there. And I'm just hoping that tonight I can be that ball here. I can get us up to 4,000.
Get us over the line to that 4,000.
Be the ball here.
Be the ball here. That's it. Speaking of drinking too much, David was supposed to mention it on Sunday night that our gaffer was seriously hungover on Sunday. I mean, he was still ill on the Sunday night. I mean, he's working in the background now, making all the gadget stuff work, all the sort of Gillette Soccer Saturday stuff work away. And he was seriously ill on Sunday. I think he went for it after that win on Saturday. Speaking of the shocking behaviour, that's the leader, by the way. That's who we're supposed to look up to. Speaking of Saturday, it's been almost a week for the game. I said it on Sunday night that it's probably one of the Old Firm victories that I've least enjoyed, and I still kind of feel like that. It was kind of done, dusted, out the road for me. How have you felt this week? Now that it's you've always got the immediate reaction, but as the weeks went on, how do you feel about it now?
Great. I think it actually fits in, Colin. I think it fits in with the whole kind of mindset around us getting back to winning the title. I think when something's you've wanted something so long, so much, tends to be when you get it, it doesn't really arrive the way you expected it to. Yeah. I'm not saying for 1 second, we'll get on to it later. You're not allowed to say that's us there. There's no fake tempting going on. But I think even you were talking last week. I heard you a great pod for you guys last week, but you're talking about how you didn't even really see the ball going in. I think it was something to do with the 32 red and the Foot Locker adverts behind the door, behind the goal, and the kind of the green and white of Celtic, and the ball just seemed to kind of hit a white back. I just lost sight of the ball.
I was the same. I didn't know it went in. It wasn't until the players went away and celebrated, and I noticed one guy running down the stairs. I don't know if he was a steward or something, but he came running down the stairs.
I want that guy's job. How does he get that? Brilliant. But it was Barkas diving. You didn't realise until you actually saw him diving that backwards way into the back of the net. How many times you've seen that over the years? That's the kind of sign that the ball is going in, the goalie can't get to it. But it just felt like I barely even cheered because I was so under pressure mentally, psychologically at that time. And fair enough, after the game we watch it back and we can see that we weren't in as much danger as we thought we were. But it was the exact opposite of everything you've been predicting. And we just come out of it with a win, which I think speaks of a kind of growing disconnect between the psychology of the support and the psychology of the players. And thank God the players are the ones that they've got the right psychology, mate. They're just carrying on, forging on, and they are unruffleable, I think, if that's even a word.
I think it is. But we don't let things like that bother us in Gersnet. Just make words up, Alex.
Just improvising, like Aribo. But I thought it was strange the way it came. But I think that in itself is a sign that something major's happening this season. I was reminded of, I don't know if you remember, one for the youth demographic out there, Frasier, the comedy show, sitcom Frasier, and his brother Niles and Daphne was the long running kind of love affair, will they, won't they? And there was the episode where he eventually consummated his relationship with Daphne in a physical sense after all the years, and the episode ended with him just sitting there looking numb, and the only thing he could say, put this wee smile on his face to Fraser, it was absolutely nothing like what I expected. after waiting all these for it, and last week I was just thinking to myself, I know how he feels,
Yeah, I must admit, I went out for a walk in the morning and I woke up in the nerves. I've never felt nerves like that for a Rangers Celtic game for a long time. I always feel more nervous when I'm not there. For some reason, when I'm at the game, I feel a bit better about it. Even when we concede a goal, always, it's not great. But when I'm not there, I'm always a wee bit nervous. But Saturday it was brutal. And I went out for a walk for an hour. I done a 3-mile walk, and it didn't work. If anything, I was worse when I came back. I felt worse, and even the goal, like you, it wasn't a happy celebration. It was more a yes kind of thing. And even when we won it, it was just more relief than anything else, and a feeling that we'd taken a positive step in terms of getting to where we all want to be. But no, nowhere near the sort of jubilation. Like when we won last year at Celtic Park, that was a party. When we won the year before, when Ryan Jack scored the goal at Ibrox, party time. Wasn't like that on Saturday there. I've quite enjoyed some of the fallout though. I mean, I'm not someone who follows the media a huge amount, but I've seen some stuff on Twitter, and there does seem to be this reinforcement that Celtic were robbed on Saturday, which is good. It's quite enjoyable.
Yep, quite enjoying that, yeah.
And I've seen a few stuff on radio. I don't listen to Radio Clyde or that as well, but I always see folk comment on Twitter, and it seems to have been its usual, basket cases phoning in. But anyway, I thought we'd have a wee quick discussion about that. Moving on, before we got into the Aberdeen game, some news today about Kai Kennedy. He's signed an extension until 2023. He's immediately gone out on loan to Wraith Rovers. Ross Wilson was sort of, he made comment on it, saying he was, delighted that he signed. He kind of felt that the narrative around the player had become quite negative, and we'll come on to talk about that. And it was sort of keen to stress that, through these negotiations, Kai Kennedy and his agent were keen to set out that their first choice was always to stay at Rangers. But there has been issues previously with Kai Kennedy. Steven Gerrard came out with a comment, I think it was about 5-6 months ago. He didn't name him, but I think everyone took it that it was aimed at him. He made a comment about players not having the right attitude, younger players, and if they're not going to have the right attitude, they'll be nowhere near his dressing room. And it was kind of seen that it was a dig at him and that his attitude wasn't quite right. So it seems quite positive news then that we've reached this point today, and and he's signed his extension.
Aye, I think Steven Gerrard is actually the man who's come out of this with most credit. Ross Wilson's obviously done a job there, but I think it's the first time I really realised, or maybe a lot of people will realise, that Stevie G is managing the entire club. I'm fixated with the first team. And I think in 2012, when we were struggling to cobble together a first team, when we kind of started back in the lower leagues, I think that's maybe reinforced that for a lot of people. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to Kai Kennedy because not a kind of willful ignorance, but more because you've seen so many young players being promising and they don't come through. I don't have the time to go and watch the youth teams and all that as well as the first team. But I think I didn't even know who Gerrard was talking about when he made that. Was it during the Viola tournament?
It was certainly through the summer. Yeah, it was through the summer, and he sort of made a comment about young players' attitudes. And
it was lovely because it was one of the moments where we've just won it, or we're doing really well in that tournament, looking really good. And the first thing he wants to talk about is something, he's using that as an opportunity to sort out the youth system, or a youth player, But it's funny, I saw a wee thing last night, just by accident, just flicking through Sky Sports, and I saw a wee thing, Alan Shearer talking about getting called up as a 17-year-old for Southampton due to a few injuries in the first team. He was still a boy, and he scores a hat-trick against Arsenal. And first thing Sunday morning, he gets called back in be his youth team manager, and he's washing the boots, he's washing the kits and all that. Just the old get your feet in the ground. And I don't think that applies so much, even, kind of 25, 30 years later. I don't think that applies so much as a way of managing younger players, especially prospects. But I think there's quite a nice thing in, and I don't mean any harm to the boy because he's only 18, but you're thinking about going to Roma, or you're thinking about going to Bayern Munich, and a month later you find yourself up at Inverness,
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice way of doing it. And I think Brian Gilmer, Kevin Thompson, Ross Wilson take a lot of credit about the way they've managed this. But mostly I think it's just a nice way of letting everybody know that Steven Gerrard is managing the club from the bottom up. He's not just here to grab a title and get yourself off to Liverpool. But I think he's the perfect man to be talking to somebody like Kai Kennedy and say to you, look what I did at Liverpool, by staying at Liverpool and by being raised in that environment. Even if it just works out that we're actually going to we've just made sure today that we'll get some money for the boy when he moves on. That's fine.
Yeah.
But no, I think we've handled it really well. And I don't know if maybe he's the same age, I think, as Aaron Hickey, the boy that played was getting first team football at Hearts and then he's going to Bologna. I don't know if that kind of thing is maybe
influenced him
in his mind as well. But he's played well at that Alcast tournament, Colin. He's played at the tournament. They're beating Roma in the final. And these are just like sweetie shops for every kind of horrible venal agent in the world. So they'll have been in about him. And you can see a boy that age, he's obviously going to get his head turned. But he went up to Inverness, he got a bit homesick, so he's probably kind of, that's part of growing up, things like that. So I think he's learned that Rangers is a place for him for now anyway. We're worried we're going to let the next Billy Gilmer go, but I think the main thing is it just proves that we're in really good hands just now with the manager and our staff.
I think the point about Gerrard is, I think that's a key one because, my boy's 15-year-old. He plays, he's at under 16 level or something at the moment, and he's always, I don't know if he's going to make pro. I don't know about that, but he's certainly attracted a wee bit of attention here and there, and he asks questions every now and again. Signing here or signing there, and I've always tried to say to him, signing for anyone isn't the end. That's the start. That's when the hard work starts. You've not made it when you've signed on the dotted line. I always mind Kenny Dalglish making a big thing about that. I think Steven Gerrard would be quite a good person to listen to. If I was sitting with my son and across the table was sitting Steven Gerrard saying, if you do this, and this, then you're in with a really, really good chance of making it. You're listening to someone who actually lived and breathed that, lifestyle. He went through that period where he was in and out of the Liverpool team as a youngster. He became frustrated. Then he became a mainstay. Then he became captain, all that kind of thing. So he's basically the man that can show Kai Kennedy and others at Ibrox, if you've got the talent, you've got the dedication, and you're prepared to put in the hard work, then the rewards are there. And I think you're right. I think a lot of players do get their heads turned. I'm a wee bit old school. I think that losing the boot room thing doesn't help control young players. You know what I mean? I think they get an inflated sense, their own sort of, their own sort of ability and all that kind of thing, because they're treated like that from a very, very early age. And then for a lot of them, when it doesn't work out, they don't know where to go, and there's a whole different thing there about mental health and all that kind of a thing. But in terms of players getting in, young players getting in, to me, they need to know that there's a lot of hard work in front of them, and cleaning the odd boot now and again, and being part of the ground staff, I'm not totally against that. Don't get me wrong, I don't advocate Jim McLean, sending guys out to dig roads and all that kind of thing, but I could see why what he was trying to do, just try to keep them grounded, and I think there's something in that's been lost a wee bit these days. But we're in a positive position with Kai Kennedy, so it's, I suppose it's all good, and it seems that whatever was happening in the summer has been averted and fixed, so to speak. Moving on to the current situation around COVID, Alex, we're in the worst period since the whole thing started. The virus has mutated, and we're all back in lockdown and tier 4, and there's talk of further restrictions to come if things don't improve. Football's continuing just now, but I did notice that the Aston Villa Liverpool game tonight, Aston Villa have had to put out their under 21s They don't have their first team coaching staff there. You know, they're returning a high level. The whole of English football is returning a high level of positive cases. You would have to think that might be reflected up here at some point. And if that does happen, are you then worried about the game continuing up here in Scotland? You know, because it was halted in March, obviously, when we got to this sort of the level of numbers and, you know, the infection rates and deaths and all that kind of thing. We're higher now than when the game was stopped in March. However, we have the proper testing facilities certainly for top flight clubs. You know, they're testing players every 3 days. But despite that, would you become concerned if the current situation escalates further and further over the coming weeks?
Absolutely, Colin. Absolutely. I was concerned. My heart sank tonight, and you feel it's selfishness beyond all belief when your first thought is, "Oh my God, that's going to affect the season." You know, and then when you see the actual headline when Nicola Sturgeon is talking about all bets being off regarding sport in Scotland, and the first thing I'm thinking is, "Oh my God, we're 19 points clear. This is going to get called off." You're only human though. You know, football's a massive part of so many people's lives, and I think that's the thing that's got to be measured against is the mental health aspect. People are stuck in the house like they never have been before. I know myself, personal experience. I was okay the first. I work from home anyway. You know, it's not a problem for me being in myself during the day. You know, because I need the peace and quiet to go on my work. But even I found maybe October, November, it was really starting to tell on me. And I started. My wife's a teacher, so she's having to go in. So I was getting worried. About her, but in a really kind of fixated way. And it was funny how the minute the football come on and I saw the red and black socks and the blue shirt, in the part, I was like, right, I've got something. It just takes it all away. You can disappear into it. And I think it'll be the same for everybody else. But you then hear yourself saying that, and you sound like the kind of hysteric who's using every kind of pathetic argument against the fact that folk could lose their life. I think yourself there and David Wren. I think I was talking to him last week or a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying how football's done really well, in managing it and testing and what have you. But this new strain, 70% more transmissible. It's a real worry. We'll have to set up new kind of protocols, I think, to ensure that football isn't affected by it. But it's that all you're weighing up. How does it look for football United? Football altogether against what's happening to the rest of society, and how much is our attitude towards that affected by the fact that we've wanted this league title for so long, and we hate the idea of the season being cancelled. The confirmation bias going on in my head just now is off the scale, because there'll be plenty of fans out there maybe wanting the season cancelled, but I think once it, because they're no one in the league, but I think once it was. They would realise kind of how much we need the football. It's a really sticky one. I think the next few weeks is going to be vital in finding out how much worse this virus, this kind of blow up of the virus is actually going to get, and we're better placed then to see what's going to happen. But if it gets much worse than it has been today, and I feel it is, then the games maybe even if just for a couple of weeks to see how it affects it. We'll maybe end up getting that winter break that we've been dreading, Yeah. I think it's an ongoing situation we really have to look at really carefully, and eventually football could just get put to the side now.
I mean, I totally get what you're saying about the mental health thing. I think it's harder at the moment in October, November. The point you made there, I think is relevant and key, because that's when the clocks went back. And, this all started a week before the clocks went forward. So we were going into spring and summer as it all kicked off. So it was light nights, slightly better weather, so everyone could get out and about. So I have to be honest with you, initially I didn't miss the football. I just think because my head was filled with so much of what was going on at the time that I didn't miss the football initially. If you were to take it away now, I think I would find it a bit tougher, when it's dark at 9:30 in the morning and dark again at 4 in the afternoon. You can't get out and about as much as you did before. I mean, I found this week quite a bit of a drag because there's been no Rangers midweek, which is beneficial for Rangers, obviously, and for Steven Gerrard and his players, because it allows them to have a wee bit of a break after a really, really busy period. But with no Rangers midweek, I was like, what am I going to do? So, I mean, I'm hoping that they do take that into consideration, because it certainly, speaking from a personal point of view, it will help me get through the week knowing that there's football on. However, given the seriousness of the situation and how this new virus is, or the new strain of the virus is so more transferable, as you were saying, is it wise for a football club to jet off to Dubai for a training break and then be videoed, in various bars and clubs and hotels, not social distancing, not wearing their masks, and just basically, ripping the piss, really? And then what sort of example does it set that the SFA go, oh, no questions to be answered here?
Again, this is the problem in judging these situations, because the ultimate story round about all this is people losing their life, through this disease. So it's either a case of how petty are we for giving a monkeys about what Celtic are up to, or it's how disgusting is that behaviour, or how irresponsible is that behaviour from Celtic.
The latter for me.
Exactly, and I think that's what you've got. I end up having to be kind of counterintuitive and playing devil's advocate with myself. I've got to always work against the kind of bias, the natural bias that I've got, to try and come to some sort of kind of judgment about it. Basically, the last few days, like you said, it was actually quite nice to have a few extra days to digest a Rangers victory, and before I started worrying about the next game. But it's a beautiful worry. It's that there's something to lose, football wise worry. It's been great, but it also let us the Celtic scenario kind of bleed in, and it's right that we're concerned that we watch what's going on at Celtic, because they are the only team that are going to stop us winning the title. It's going to be them or COVID, that stops us actually securing 55. Be that the season's called to a halt because of what COVID's doing to society, or we actually get struck down by it in some way, or our players get hit by it, or there's some sort of sanction, some kind of incident. So we've got to watch Celtic. We've got to see what they're doing. And I was quite, to be honest, I was quite enjoying it, because the last two seasons, everybody's obsessed with the fact it's January. This is when Rangers usually have their meltdown, and this is the narrative that's built up around Stevie G's Rangers, and it's a bit disingenuous. As the last two times we won the Old Firm game at New Year, we didn't even go top of the league, but you would think we'd actually been like 6 or 7 points clear, and we were clear favourites. But what did happen in both occasions was we kind of slipped up when we come back to the winter break, and Celtic stepped it up. On both times, I think they actually went 8 games, 8 straight wins as soon as they come back. And as we were slipping up, they were just sailing away into the distance. So to see them make an arse of their winter break, we never heard anything about their winter breaks the last 2 years. So to see them make a bit of an arse of it, I think that they've been done in by photographers and what have you. They've been done in by a kind of some sort of grass. I don't feel like it, but these things happen. It's happened to us as well. But you see them with the pints and all that. Apart from anything else, kind of celebrating getting beat by Rangers.
Yeah,
it was nice to see them kind of reducing themselves to the same level as we've had for Jack Ross this season. Kind of quite happy to lose 1-0 at Ibrox, and then they get thumped off Ross County and Livingston the next few games. We've had it for somebody else who escapes me. Their name actually escapes me at this point. But teams that are getting quite chuffed just to have given Rangers a bit of a game. It was nice to see Celtic doing the same thing.
Adopt that attitude.
Exactly. But I don't know. It's nice to know that they'll come back this time. Everybody's been looking at their winter break. People have been disapproving of it. They haven't been able to. They were neither bad enough against us, nor was it such a kind of unexpected defeat that they could go out there and have a clear mindset of what they should do. Right, we're going to regroup, full on focus. Or Celtic just knew, because it had such a bad run earlier in the season. I think they actually think they're coming back up again. They've reset. I think they've they've been downsizing under law for a few years now, and I think they've actually accepted second place in their minds this season. But I think this has messed them up. The kind of exposure they got in the media last week. They'll come back now not really knowing what people think of them, and including their own fans. And if we were to slip up at Pittodrie, I'm not actually sure that they're ready to seize the moment on Monday night against a really angry Hibs team, who didn't want the game moved. So football wise, I think it's actually worked out well for us. But in terms of COVID, when you're seeing, your better half is involved in the NHS, when people are seeing the damage that's been caused by this, I think when they see what Celtic have been doing, it goes beyond football.
It's the biggest sort of defence of it has been, it was pre-approved, the trip was approved, and I get that, and they pissed off Hibs. I mean, that's got nothing to do with us, but they've pissed off Hibs by basically moving that fixture without sort of, running it past them first. It's one going on the trip, given how quickly the thing has changed. The landscape has totally changed very, very quickly. To still feel that going on that trip in the first place was acceptable, I find quite questionable. But to then be naive enough to be caught out in terms of photographs coming back, as you say, sitting around the pool, pints, they have clearly broken some of the protocols that are there that have been put in place by the joint response group. In terms of if you are staying in a hotel, you have to have a dedicated room. There's no mixing with other people in the hotel. That's been broken. They weren't social distancing. They weren't wearing masks. They were walking into bars, not a care in the world. That is a giant two fingers to most people, in my opinion, including their own supporters. And I totally understand, the likes of Kilmarnock and St Mirren, who have been hammered for breaching COVID protocols. They've got their appeals in. It would be amazing if those sort of punishments weren't overturned now, because as Kilmarnock have already said, we're just going to show the videos of Celtic in Dubai and say, well, what are you doing about that? So it strikes me as very odd. I can't get my head around it. I'm always quite suspicious of Celtic because I think they're quite good operators when it comes to PR. So this is such an obvious PR disaster that I'm thinking there has to be some other angle here. And that this is maybe deliberate. I don't know. But for a club that has been so good at the PR stuff over the last few years, to make such a basic amateur mistake. Do you remember the game at Easter Road when Rangers were beating the old Ramsden's Cup final, or the Petrofac or whatever it was, when Wraith Rovers beat us? Possibly the angriest I've ever felt as a Rangers supporter is a few hours later, I'm seeing images of Alan McCoy singing the karaoke. And it's a bit like that. If I was a Celtic fan, I'd be thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm locked up in my house. I'm not allowed to go and see my family. That mob have just been pumped at Ibrox for the third game in a row by a team that are 8 years old in their eyes, right? And now they're on the lash in Dubai, sitting by the swimming pool. It is such a bad look. And for a club like Celtic, as I said, they've been pretty slick at the PR stuff. Because they're so good at the PR stuff, I'm now thinking there must be another angle to this. They couldn't have made that bad a judgment of error. There has to be something else behind it.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the way they operate with PR, the way Law and Lennon operate, the way Lennon's operated as a player and then manager at Celtic has been through obfuscation. When they lose a game, they just change the subject straight away. And that kept, you've seen the clips of Celtic blogs talking about the conspiracies, their conspiracy theories about why Rangers are, going to, be allowed to stop the 10 and all this kind of thing. So you don't want to come across like that kind of crackpot. But I think there's no denying, you were saying you're not bothered about the Hibs, not too bothered about Hibs game, that's Hibs business, on Monday night. But that is the one that actually gets me, because I remember what happened with us in 2008, when we were trying to, win the UEFA Cup for Scotland, and we know 5 years before that, Martin O'Neill with Neil Lennon in his midfield made a huge deal of the fact that they were having to come to Ibrox on a Sunday after playing a European semi-final at Boavista on the Thursday night. And Martin O'Neill used the exact phrase. He actually said, I don't know how the Celtic fans are going to react to this, i.e. feel free to riot, because there was no way Rangers would be asked to do this. Cut to 5 years later, and we were made to play 2 Old Firm games at Parkhead as we went for the title, either side of one of the legs against Fiorentina. The exact same scenario, and we actually had to play twice an Old Firm game away from home. So when you see Celtic being allowed to cancel a game, and why are they not playing these games that they've got in hand? They've had
I know
they've had opportunities to get those games played as well. I really don't. That really does stick in my craw. And I think it's like everything else, Colin. Before 2012, I would be the one that'd be up there trying to see the other team's point of view. I was always trying to be the non-blinkered, kind of open-minded, we're all football fans together type person. But they've seen the way Lawwell and Lennon have operated over the past, back best part of 20 years. I wouldn't put it past them that it's almost trying to cheapen our victory by saying that they don't care about it. Worried that we're now going to win the league. It's too far from to pull it back. And there's a kind of look at us having a pint, look at us not really caring. Maybe if we break the COVID rules, it gets to a certain point, you could actually just detonate the whole season. I don't know.
I find
I hate even saying that. I hate even talking like that, mate. But it's just.
I find the point you made about, Celtic do have 3 games in hand. Now, Doncaster made a big thing through the week there, saying there might be, a backlog, a fixture backlog at the end of the season because we've got 33 fixtures, 33 rounds of fixtures to complete, and there's only 34 windows. And at that point, you're thinking, well, why are Celtic not playing one of these games through this week? They could catch up in these games through January, and there's one midweek lying there, and they're lying in the beach in Dubai. So yeah, it's. I get what you're saying. You don't want to be that type of fan, you know what I mean? But it just seems like too obvious a blunder to me, and it makes me wonder that there's something else behind it, if you know what I mean. Because Celtic have been very slicker than we are when it comes to the PR stuff. This seems too obvious, a sort of PR blunder.
They've done worse, Colin. We think that they've done worse in the past. We don't want to say what, but that's the reason we were playing 2 games at Parkhead, either side of the time. So that it's stuff like that you don't want to be that kind of fan, but you realise not being that kind of fan is what lets them do that.
Get away with it. Yeah.
So it's a tricky situation. Maintaining your own identity, maintaining your own kind of idea of what it is to be a Rangers fan, what you want your club to be like, but also trying not to get steamrolled by a kind of a horrible PR machine. Yeah.
Before we move on to Sunday's game, have a wee look at Sunday's game. I am again contractually obliged to mention the Rangers Pick'em game. So it's Rangers Picks, which is available for every Rangers match. So we're taking this opportunity to promote it tonight. Rangers Picks is a totally free Pick'em game. It's worth £1,000 prize pool. It's powered by the same company that are working with Rangers on the stadium Wi-Fi and the new club app, and Rangers Picks. The more fans that play, the more money the club will receive. To play, all you need to do is visit www.rangerspicks.com. There are 12 questions there that you need to complete about Rangers, the up-and-coming Rangers game, and it gives yourself a chance of winning a share of £1,000. As I say, it's totally free. You must be over 18 to play. T's and C's apply, as always. And remember, guys, always play responsibly. I had a wee look at this before we came on. I haven't managed to have my picks, but you've had a wee shot, have you not, Alex?
I have indeed, sir. Yes, I have indeed. The minute there's any kind of advertising, I'm out there prostituting myself, doing everything I can to get it across the board. I quite enjoyed it. It lets you just basically say how brilliant you think Rangers are going to be on Sunday. You can predict how many shots certain players are going to have on goal. The strikers, how many tackles, for instance, Connor Goldson's going to make, how many goals you think we're going to score. So I think, according to if Rangers win 15-0, Connor Golson has 25 tackles, and Morelos gets 4 hat-tricks. But
you're up for a grand?
I think I'm going to get £999.
Yeah, it sent me my code. I haven't quite entered it yet. I was having a wee look at it before we came online. The questions aren't just random; they are random questions, but there's also wee clues. So if it asks you, how many corners you think, Rangers will get on Sunday, it tells you how many corners we got in the last game and stuff like that. And it's all the proceeds are going to the club. So if you've got the opportunity, guys, we would recommend it. It's on a Sunday, Alex. The big game, Pittodrie. Big opportunity to go, let me think, 22 points clear, if my maths is correct. Is that right?
That is correct.
Me and my maths isn't the best, by the way. So, a really big opportunity to put further distance between us and Celtic before they play a very angry Hibs on Monday. But Pittodrie, I posted an article from The Guardian through the week there. It was from one of their 80s blogs, and it was talking about the game with Neil Simpson. And the headline was something, a rivalry that became really bitter due to a bad tackle. And a lot of Rangers fans came back at me saying, it's not a rivalry. Why are you calling it a rivalry? And I was like, well, one, it's not my article. And two, is it a rivalry? One thing I will say, the games at Ibrox don't feel like a sort of rivalry game to me. They just feel like you're playing, I don't know, Motherwell or Hearts or whatever. But the games at Pittodrie, and even going back to the 80s, when Alex Ferguson was there, there always has been a sort of edge at these games. And I don't know why, because older fans I speak to have always told me that it was one of the better places to go to, for an away day. You went up on the Friday night, you stayed in your digs, you were well looked after, the locals were very welcoming, and you had a few beers and you came home. And then in the 80s, it sort of changed, and then from that game with Simpson, it's totally changed. I've only been to a handful of games up at Pittodrie, but it is the most hateful atmosphere I think I've ever experienced. I had to duck a bucket of chips at one game. This is true. It's a true story. Ian Jess had just scored a free kick. I think it was one each game, and Ian Jess scored in the first couple of minutes, and I was down at that corner flag, and they all came running down the stairs and running towards us, and coins and everything coming over. But I just seen this big bucket of chips coming right to my head, and I had to get out the road of it. And it is a kind of feeling that you're sneaked in and chased out of, Aberdeen and Pittodrie these days. So that makes it, a bit of an edgier fixture. But of course, there's no fans in at the moment, but still a tricky place to go.
Yes, it is, and it's toxic. And I think it's mostly one way. I'm going to say that, obviously, a bit biased, but you're talking about some of the fans, even older than myself, as you say, that were up there in the 60s, the 50s, whatever, before the oil landed.
I was going to say that the oil changed things. I think.
How really did Glasgow? I think it becomes cultural. I think you're talking about the welcoming locals. I think some of the locals were so welcoming that their husbands were really upset when they welcomed the kind of glamorous Glasgow boys up to the wee fishing town as it was then. And I think there's been a lot of bad blood for kind of social political reasons before the football. I think Aberdeen fans like to portray it as we couldn't handle it when suddenly they had a good team, under Sir Alec, and I heard you guys talking about Jim McLean beautifully after his passing on the pod earlier. But it was with Dundee United, there was always a kind of we were actually their bogey team. Dundee United were a bit more successful than us in that kind of wee period between, and they won the league basically right in the middle of us not winning it for 9 years. Aberdeen won 3 titles in that time, but we were always capable of getting a good result at Tannadice, and they really rolled us over, Dundee United. Whereas Aberdeen, it was just relentless beatings. We won once at Pittodrie in 12 years. I think in the mid 80s it was Robert Pritz and I think Big DJ got the goals.
Derek Johnson,
and it was that was a bit of a shock to the system for me at that age, because I was growing up, we just never won at Pittodrie. As simple as that. I was at the game. I was at the game in '88 when Durant get assaulted brutally by Simpson, and that was the first time I remember being there where we were actually, it probably happened all the time, but we were actually in the south stand as well as having the old beach end as well. And I don't know if they felt maybe that we were starting to come back, the old Rangers were coming back up and taking over their ground again or something, and that was creating more hostility. But I just bet you were also talking in the previous pod beautifully about the Ibrox disaster and the memorial But you're also having to unfortunately talk about people kind of desecrating the memory of the 66. And the first place I ever heard that in action was Pittodrie. It was the first time I'd ever seen the casuals. You know, at that time, the boys wearing the Pringles. It was at that time. And I'm like, who are these guys? You know, I was going up there. I think I was up there the first time it was a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. And you've seen these boys down at the corner of the south stand, you know, who spent the whole game just looking at us, and there wasn't a scarf amongst them. And this was a new thing, as far as I was concerned. And I think that also, you know, being the inventors of hooligan chic, you know, are the first people to bring it to Scotland. I think them and Motherwell. I think that also made them feel a wee bit superior as well in a kind of aggressive sort of way. Colin, I was a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. I'm in the West End in Glasgow, so if I'm having a few drinks before the game, a few pals in the West End, I'll get the Hillhead. I'll go to Hillhead Underground Station, and I was there standing in the queue one day. I'm like, this isn't Rangers fans. What is going on here? And it was at the 50th birthday of one of the top Aberdeen casuals. The best thing they could think to do was get on at a quiet underground stop and then turn up at Ibrox.
Is that when it all kicked off? It
didn't even kick off. It just everybody came out aloud with their pints and just said, what are they doing? Because the police were just holding the back. There was no danger of anything happening. But this is the kind of thing. I'm reminded of Leeds Man United. You know, it's a kind of one way. They're hating us, putting so much time into hating us that you eventually have to kind of reciprocate in some way. There's only Rangers and Celtic dominate the league in Scotland. There's only 4 times as the most any other club in Scotland has won the league. It's 3 clubs, Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen. So there's always going to be that wee thing where, you know, after Celtic, one of them is obviously going to kind of want a rivalry with us and earn it every now and then by winning stuff. But I'm glad that we don't have to go there as fans, you know, and I'll be quite happy. Pittodrie, I used to find the atmosphere fantastic. Really great ground, but this is me going back to kind of late 70s, early 80s. Once it got into kind of mid 80s, it got really toxic, and the Durant, what happened to Ian Durant, really just was. I'd been going for years. I've been building up to that, you know, and then you then get Aberdeen fans celebrating it. We haven't
still celebrating it to this day.
Aye, you know, we haven't lost it under Steven Gerrard. You know, we usually draw one and win one, and I would love, as a kind of signifier that we're actually on to something special this season, I would love us to win 2 games at Pittodrie this season, both were league games at Pittodrie this season on Monday. On Sunday. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't really enjoy it, you know, because I do reciprocate that rivalry, but not in the way. It's not a derby for me. It's just a bunch of people I don't want to be involved with.
Yeah, a bunch of people we don't like very much. Going on to Steven Gerrard's press conference today, gave an update on the injury front. Alex, Arfield out for 5 weeks, and apparently he's just out the moon boot. Jack, yet again, is apparently close to coming back. We've heard that before, though. Wee bit surprised with this one, as though Kemar Roof that's probably out for the next couple of games. Now, I'll start with Arfield. It's a bit of a blow. I mean, I had a feeling when I saw the replay of it's him making the tackle, but he went over in his ankle pretty bad, and I must admit, I'm not surprised.
No, I'm not surprised, but kind of gutted, Colin. I think looking at the 3 of them, I mean, I think, was it no against Aberdeen? That was the last time Ryan Jack played for us. They come off. I think when we beat them 4-0 at Ibrox. I think that might be the last time. Was that when he got injured? I would have to check. I think he come off. When we went 4-0 up pretty early in the second half, he come off straight away, and we thought it was resting in my head of the Benfica game. I think we're playing Benfica at Ibrox in the Thursday after that, and he's just never come back. And he played well. He's played well a few times. He scored at Pittodrie last season. Scott Arfield scored at Pittodrie last season. Scott Arfield scored that game. We beat them 4-0 the last time we met them. Roof scored that game as well. So you're looking at serious operators against Aberdeen, all missing for this game. But if we were to pull it off, and it's far from beyond the realms of possibility, we should, you know, really be winning this game. But if we pull it off, I think the narrative suddenly changes to, we've got Motherwell the following week, we've got Ross County the week after that. These are games we should be winning. We've got a week in between each game to rest and recuperate, and it's like, plus we've got Scotty Arfield's coming back, Ryan Jack's coming back, you know, Kemar Roof's coming back. We're looking fantastic. If we're to lose, Or even drop points. And it's amazing how finely balanced it is. It's like, oh my God, and we don't have Ruth, we don't have Scotty Arfield, we don't have Ryan Jack. The
whole mentality changes.
Exactly. But I think I want the boys back, because they're cracking player. I think Kamar Ruth is, the most intelligent player in Scottish football right now. I think he's just fantastic to watch. Sensational. He's like Stephen A. Smith and Nikica Jelavic combined with the nous and streetwise. He's got his street sense. He's absolutely fantastic. He's going to be a big miss for anybody. But no, we've got enough there to win without these guys. And if we can, I think it'll be massive.
In the starting 11, I mean, defensively, do you think it'll be Balogun or Hollander?
Balogun played the last two, did fantastically after that tackle last week. Alone, he deserves to be back in there. It's got to be Balogun, mate. You
think it'll be the same midfield threes last week?
Yeah. I would go with that as well. Yeah, and the question is what's happening up front, and I think it's going to be Hadji.
So Morelos,
Hadji,
Kent,
McKent, and Morelos. I think there's a kind of you could maybe have Eaton in there because Aberdeen are so physical. They've got 3 big boys at the back, but I don't think we want to match that. I think we want to just play through it, play around it. And
I quite like Eaton coming on when we've got a lead to defend.
Yeah.
I think he protects the ball very well. He gets us up the park very well. He's arguably the best best of the strikers at doing that, getting us up the park and winning free kicks. So I think he's a good option to come on. I think he'll start with Morelos on Sunday, I must admit. Alex, one sort of final point before we go, conscious of time. Connor Golson was also at his presser today, and he was speaking about making use of the training grounds, because they didn't have that midweek game. And it kind of goes on to what you've just said there. We've got 4 games in January, and there's a decent amount of time between them all. So, I mean, how important is that in terms of one, letting the players, recuperate a little bit, not have as heavy a schedule as they have had practically for sort of July, August, because essentially the Europa League stuff started straight away, and that was it. You were Sunday, Thursday constantly, and also to get back in the training field and work on shape, set up, tactics, all that kind of thing. Because I kind of feel the tempo and all that has kind of dropped recently, and maybe the game plan hasn't been worked to the sort of level it was at the start of the season. But with only 4 games in the month, surely gives you a chance to work on all these things again. So 1, it's less games in the players. 2, it's more time in the training field working on the stuff, your game set up and all that kind of stuff.
I think the main thing with this is it's not a 3-week break. I think there's a mass psychosis going on with the Rangers support just now, Colin, and I include myself on this. I am on the bonkers bus. Like, this is January because we're having 8 days off after having played midweek weekend all through December. I think we're actually seeing this as the final kind of psychological hurdle. Can we recover better for the winter break than we did the last 2 seasons? It's not a winter break. We're only after 8 days, but I think we're determined that this is going to be, Kilmarnock at Rugby Park or whatever.
Yeah.
Because just because it feels 8 days. 8 days off just now feels like a massive winter break, but we're not going to Dubai. We're not playing Lokomotiv Tashkent. I'm just hoping that the guys that they're pacing the recovery. 7 days is what they need. I think there's been a 8 days rest. I think it's just going to be perfect for them. I think there's been a kind of economy of performance all the way through December. What we did in December is absolutely magnificent. To lose 1 goal at home, 1 goal away in the league, while we're playing, epic European football and, we had an epic exit in the League Cup as well. It's just been phenomenal to keep that consistency going in the league all through December. And we've never gone into, and then to add like a 7th game, to the December schedule last weekend, tack that on at the end, a kind of massive 6-pointer like that. I think it's been fantastic. And I just want to see the players go out on Sunday and contextualize the whole thing. Just say no, all that kind of, and it was slightly bogus anyway. The way things were regarded last season, they kind of were supposed to have chucked it in January or February. It wasn't that straightforward. We weren't that hot the first season going into December. It was just the Old Firm game that kind of thing. But I think maybe having the 3 weeks off allowed them to feel just how exhausted they were after playing 14 games in Europe before Christmas, as well as the league campaigns the last 2 seasons. So I'm just hoping that 8 days is just perfect. Keep things ticking over. Work on a few things, as you say. But I would like to think that Rangers will feel proud of what they've done for the last 7 games in the league, and they will regroup, get their energy back. And I'd like to see a wee bit of a celebration of what they've done on the park on Sunday. I'd like to see them rejuvenated, and I'd like to see them take that out in Aberdeen and let us all just enjoy what's left of this season.
Yeah, however long it is. I mean, I've always been I was quite adamant on Sunday that the league hasn't won, and I've always said to my boy, over the last sort of couple of months, that come the 1st of February, we'll have a real idea of where we are. Because I've always felt, if we get through December, we won that game and we got to the 19 points. I was always conscious that then we've got Pittodrie, we've got Easter Road, and Fir Park can be quite tricky as well. So I've always said to my son, because he's like desperate, have we won it yet? Do you think we've won it yet? I'm like, when we get to the 1st of February, we'll have a good idea of where we are. If we get through the next 4 games unscathed or relatively unscathed, then I think we've taken a big step forward in getting that league title. But it's not over until it's over. Hey, Alex, I think we've sort of wrapped everything up there. So a big thanks to Alex for his contribution there. Great stuff from him as always. He's back on Sunday night. He's back with, I think Ross is hosting and David Wren's back on, and Alex will be there as well. So mind and tune into those 3 guys. We'll obviously look at the game on Sunday and various other bits and bobs. In the meantime, get yourself over to the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, as I say to you every week when I host, strange times, so look after one another, stay safe, and until next time, bye for now.